Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something totally wild. We're taking a strictly documentary approach to investigate an epic and, frankly, pretty terrifying supernatural worldview uncovered in the source text, Death, the Underworld, and Chaos in the Hebrew Bible. We're going to look at the ancient Israelite framework exactly as it's presented in the material. It reveals this highly structured, visceral, cosmic war, and it is absolutely fascinating. Let's map it all out for you.
Okay, let's dive into this, because right off the bat, our source text shatters a massive, centuries-old misconception. We're really used to the Platonic framework. That's the Greek philosophical idea that the soul is naturally immortal, the physical body is just a temporary prison, and death is, well, a liberation into a spiritual state. That's kind of how a lot of us are wired to think, right? But the ancient Israelite worldview? No way, it couldn't be more different. In this framework, death is a cosmic tragedy. The underworld is a very real, very physical domain, and most importantly, literal forces of chaos are actively opposing creation. It's just a completely different map of reality.
So that brings us to Section 1, Rethinking the Ancient Afterlife and Escaping the Greek Framework. The source argues that centuries of neat, systematized theology have completely domesticated the untamed, dramatic reality of these ancient texts. Let's go deeper into Section 2, Inside the Cosmic Underworld. We'll be looking at Sheol, the Rephaim, and the Serpentine Gate.
Right at the center of this map is Sheol. And the text defines Sheol not just as a metaphorical grave where you put a physical body, but as the actual cosmic underworld beneath the earth. It's a genuine physical domain where the dead exist in a diminished but still very real state of consciousness and social organization. It's got depth, it's got structure. It was viewed as a place you could theoretically descend directly down into.
And so who exactly lives down there? Well, a very specific class of beings known as the Rephaim. The source identifies these shades of the dead not as your everyday humans, but as a class of giant warriors. They're actually born from the cosmic transgression in Genesis 6, the direct transgressive offspring of the famous Sons of God narrative. And get this, when they die, they don't just vanish. They retain a fully structured social hierarchy right there in Sheol. And this brilliantly illustrates the social dynamic of the underworld. Just picture this highly cinematic moment from Isaiah chapter 14. When the arrogant king of Babylon dies and goes down to Sheol, these dead, giant Rephaim kings literally rise up from their underworld thrones to taunt him. They say, "You too have become as weak as we. You have become like us." They recognize the guy. They mock him. It's an incredibly active, socially structured scene. But here is the ultimate cosmic insult. While the Rephaim kings somehow managed to keep their thrones down in Sheol, the Babylonian king, he is completely stripped of all royal dignity. He gets what the source calls an anti-throne. Instead of a seat of honor, his bed is made of maggots, and his covering is literally worms. It represents the total cosmic deflation of his pride and the complete dissolution of his identity.
Now, the underworld wasn't totally cut off from the world above. Take the geographic territory of Bashan, for example. The ancient Israelites understood Bashan as the serpentine gate of the underworld. It was the earthly territory of King Og, who was the very last of the living Rephaim. So when Israel conquered King Og, it wasn't just standard military history. According to our source, it was a massive cosmic victory to close the geographic gate of the underworld and completely wipe out the last living trace of that transgressive giant lineage.
Moving on to Section 3, Monsters of Anti-Creation, the Unified Cosmic Opposition. Because the underworld isn't just an isolated spot, it's part of a much larger, frankly terrifying alliance. According to the source's fascinating findings, the terrifying entities you're seeing here aren't just separate, random myths. They actually form a single, unified cosmic faction dedicated to opposing Yahweh's creation. You've got Mot, which is death personified, with a literally insatiable appetite. Leviathan, the twisting chaos sea dragon. Rahab, the pierced dragon of the deep. And Abaddon, a zone of ultimate destruction. Basically, the chaos waters of the dragons and the underworld of death are functionally the exact same anti-creation space.
And perhaps the most surprising canonical proof of this connection is found in the story of Jonah. Talk about a bad day. When Jonah gets swallowed by the great fish, he doesn't just describe the ocean. He describes being in the fish's belly, surrounded by the chaos waters of the ocean's depths, and in the belly of Sheol all at the exact same time. He's not in three different places. These are all vivid descriptions of the exact same cosmic domain of anti-creation.
This brings us to Section 4, the land of forgetfulness, the theological crisis of death. This is where things get really dark. See, the ancient Israelites didn't just fear the underworld because it was dark or full of giant shades. They feared it most because it was the land of forgetfulness. This was a terrifying realm where memory just ceases. And most importantly, it's a place of radical divine absence. It's where the covenantal relationship with Yahweh is experientially suspended. They genuinely believed that down in Sheol, praising God was downright impossible.
So the crucial point is this. If death permanently ends the covenant relationship and everyone eventually dies, does death ultimately defeat Yahweh? Does the anti-creation faction just win by default, exhausting the reach of God's covenant by swallowing up all of his people? It's a massive theological crisis.
Which leads us to the thrilling turning point in Section 5, Resurrection as New Creation, the Cosmic Counterattack. Let's move to and see how this builds. Because the source text argues that physical resurrection isn't just some late theological appendix slapped onto the end of the Hebrew Bible. No, it's an absolute cosmic necessity to solve this exact crisis. This sets up a stark contrast in Isaiah 26. For the Rephaim, the cosmic enemies, the text declares they will not rise. They face permanent judicial erasure. But for the covenant dead, there's this miraculous promise. They will rise. The earth will literally act as a womb and give birth to them.
And how does this actually happen? Through what the text beautifully calls the dew of light. The source unpacks this incredibly dense imagery. It's Yahweh's life-giving moisture infused with the very first light of creation. It acts almost like a weapon of new creation, infiltrating that dark, uncreating space of the underworld to dissolve its power from the inside out, triggering the earth to birth the dead back to life. It's amazing imagery.
Building momentum right to the climax, here is Section 6, the ultimate cosmic victory, slaying the dragon.
The source impartially details how the New Testament authors utilize this exact ancient cosmic warfare template to explain what Jesus actually accomplished during his 3 days in the earth. It is a 3-step victory procession. First, a deliberate descent directly into the Sheol chaos domain. Second, the active defeat of the powers of anti-creation right on their own turf. And third, the ascent, leading captives and permanently overturning the land of forgetfulness.
And this secures the identities of the covenant people forever. As Daniel 12 outlines, this introduces the concept of the Book of Life, which is the ultimate antidote to the land of forgetfulness. Those whose names Yahweh remembers awaken to everlasting life. It's the final, permanent reversal of being forgotten. Basically, if your name is in the book, the underworld absolutely cannot erase you.
Which leads to the ultimate cosmic reversal, beautifully captured in Isaiah 25:8. He will swallow up death forever. Think about the perfect irony there for a second. Mot, the personification of death who had an insatiable appetite for swallowing the living, is, in the very end, finally swallowed by Yahweh. This completely reshapes our understanding of the texts. If the resurrection isn't just about escaping a physical body to go off to a spiritual heaven, but is actually a grand, dragon-slaying victory over the unified forces of chaos in the underworld, how does this change the way you view the new creation? We hope this explainer leaves you eager to reread these ancient texts with this epic, recovered framework in mind. Thanks for joining us, and keep learning.